morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this next episode of Clef Notes. And in this episode, we are going to take a look at clef signs. Now, I remember from the prior video that I said that clef signs indicate range, and they also give us some kind of reference pitch. We looked at one particular clef sign. That's the one that you see at the top left of your screen. Why don't we do an indication right there? This one right here. Okay, it's a very small arrow, but it's not the largest clef in the world, so a small arrow for a small clef. Now this particular clef is known as, drumroll please, treble clef. One F in clef. Treble clef, the troublesome clef, if you will, is really not that troublesome. It is, why do you call it a treble clef? It's because of the range, sort of a treble voice. Sometimes you'll see a choir that's called a treble choir. Frequently that's for higher range voices. And this is known as a treble clef because usually it's the higher pitched instruments that use treble clefs. You might have violins will use treble clef, flute will use treble clef, sometimes violas, they're usually playing alto clef, but there's a variety. It's the upper voice instruments that use treble clef. A treble clef is a G clef, as we mentioned in the prior video, so let's put that in, a G clef. And because it's reference pitch that perhaps it is indicating is this second line here, which is the pitch G natural. So that's treble clef. It's for the upper voices. Moving down the line, we see bass clef. So let's write that in. So this is bass clef. Bass clef. And bass clef is used for the lower range voices. So for example, at Purdue University, Fort Wayne, in one of the choirs, I typically sing bass. And so I usually use this symbol, the bass clef. Now I also play piano and pipe organ in addition to violin, and frequently I am using bass clef a lot. Bass clef is extraordinarily important for piano. I'd say even more so in pipe organ because you will have a line there frequently dedicated just to your feet. But again, it's for the lower range instruments. So cellos will use bass clef, double bass will use bass clef. Pipe organ piano uses bass clef. Some guitars will use bass clef. Singers will use bass clef. It's similar to treble clef. You've got a lot of usage. Guitars can play treble clef as well. But for lower range instruments, you'll see a lot of people using bass clef. Now, bass clef is called not a G clef. It's called an F clef. And why do we call this an F clef? The reason we call it an F clef is that its reference pitch is F natural. So if you notice, why don't we draw something here? A thin line. Let me just circle this. Look here, right where I'm drawing that thin line. I'll draw an arrow to it too, so you can maybe just see that a little bit better. Right there. You see those two dots. What do those two dots mean? Those dots surround, if you will, they sandwich the pitch F natural. If you look here, draw another arrow to this little symbol here, the bass clef actually has this little bulb, like right at the end. Think of it like a knot at the very end of your shoelace. And that bulb sits on the pitch or the ledger line F natural. That's why it's called an F clef. Again, this is for lower range instruments, lower range voices. So that's bass clef. Moving on down the line, we have another very common clef, and this is alto clef. Now, coming from a background playing violin, frequently we would call this or viola clef. Because a lot of violists are going to be spending the majority of their time playing in this clef. This clef, again, all the clef signs are telling you is a range. So, and there's overlap between all these different clefs here. I mean, it's not total one-to-one overlap, but there's a little bit of overlap between the range of pitches a treble clef might be playing, bass clef might be doing, alto clef, etc. So when I say playing in a clef, I'm saying that their range of pitches is the range covered by that particular clef. It doesn't mean that they're limited to a particular set of pitches. Just these are the typical pitches that that clef will cover. An alto clef is known as a C clef. A couple reasons for that. One is that it kind of looks like a C. You might say the bass clef looks a bit like a C, but it's kind of a backwards C. This looks more like a C clef, and actually the way I have written this alto clef is a shorthand symbol. The actual alto clef, or if you maybe the more formal way of writing it, is a lot fancier. We'll try it, just to give you an idea, because if you run across it, you won't be taken unawares. But a more formal way of writing that clef might be something. Oh, let's give a little bit thicker line so that you can actually see it. Might be something like this. I know this is not very good. My apologies. We'll write that bar here. Right there, and this is something like what you might see. It's a little more curved up, a little curved in, but it looks a bit like a C. All that we've done with this shorthand is basically have flattened it out a bit, made it a little more linear, easier to write, easier to see what it is we're doing. So let's get rid of that. Alto clef again is C clef because the alto clef surrounds this middle line. Let me indicate that middle line. So where the tip of the arrow is touching, that is the ledger line C natural. And that's also why it's called the C clef, because its reference pitch is C natural. That's where you're going to see, that is your sort of home base when it comes to that clef. Now the clef right below it is also a C clef. It looks very similar, but it's not the same thing. This is tenor clef. Tenor clef is, again, it's a C clef, but it is for a range of instruments that, again, are very low voice. You'll typically see perhaps cello will be playing in tenor clef. It again takes its name from how it looks. It surrounds this middle line. Let me grab an arrow here. Again, where the tip of the arrow touches, that is our note C natural. Tenor clef, it's another option. It's another way that we can write music if we have a particular range of instruments. It's somewhat common. You will see this a lot in orchestral music and other kinds of music. It's not something that perhaps the majority of people will use. Speaking from my own experience in music theory, I can tell you the number of times we used tenor clef was very, very limited. Or perhaps not limited, but very rare. We did not use tenor clef a lot to write our musical analysis, musical examples. We're frequently using treble or bass with an occasional alto clef thrown in for good measure. But those are the four common clefs you're going to see in music. It somewhat depends on what instrument you play, but they are very, very common. You're going to see this all the time, and it's just a good thing to know as to what exactly you're doing. What is it that you're seeing? Do you need to know that these are F clefs and C clefs and G clefs? Not really. The only reason you're going to need to know that is if you're taking a test or something of that nature, but it does help to understand what our reference pitch is, where are we situated in the scale of things, pun intended. It's a nice way of looking at and organizing our thoughts about how do we approach music and what are we going to be playing. So hopefully this video was helpful to you, and in our next video we're going to take a look at some more things to do with clef signs, or some additional things you might see surrounding a clef sign. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.